stays dark except for a little light which comes on through the skylight. Everyone's in bed. Mr. and Mrs. Frank lie on the couch in the main room, which has been pulled out to serve as a makeshift double bed. Margot sleeps on the mattress on the floor in the main room behind a certain stretch across from privacy. The others are all in their accused rooms. From outside we hear two drunken soldiers singing Little Marilyn. A girl high giggle is heard. The sound of running feet is heard. Coming closer and fading in the distance, throughout the sea, there is a distance from the airplanes passing through overhead. A match suddenly flares in the attic. We see Mr. Van Dam. He is getting his bearings. He comes quickly to the stairs. It goes cupboard where the food is stored. Again, the match is flared, quickly blown out. The dim figure is seen, still black up the stairs. There is a quiet second or two, broken by the sound of airplanes and the running feet on the street below. Suddenly, out of sight into the dark, we hear Anne screaming.
No, don't take me!
She moans and tosses and cries in her sleep. The only people awake, terrified, Dustle sits up in bed furious.
Shush, Anne, shush. Do you want to wake the others up?
Still in the nightmare.
Save me!
She screams and screams. Dustle gets out of the bed, going over to her, trying to wake her.
For God's sake, quiet. Do you want someone to hear?
In Dustle's room, Mr. Frank grabs a shawl and pulls around her. She rushes into Anne, taking her arms. Mr. Frank hurriedly gets up, putting his overcoat. Margot sits up, terrified. Peter's light going on in his room. To Anne in her room.
It's all right.
Over her shoulder to Dustle.
Will you be kind enough to turn on the light and say Dustle?
Back to Anne.
Hey, Sammy, Bill, take me.
Dustle turns on the light in the bedroom. Mr. Frank holds Anne. In her arms gradually, Anne comes to this nightmare and still trembling with horror. Mr. Frank comes to the room and goes quickly looking out the window, looking out sure that no one outside has heard. Anne screamed. Mr. and Mrs. Frank hold Anne talking softly in the room. The main room stands up on the chair, turning on the center hanging lamp. A light comes on Van Dam's room. Overheard, puts on a robe coming from his room. To Mr. Frank blowing his nose.
Who knows what there's somebody down there on the streets? He's endangering all our lives. Every night she takes a turn. I don't sleep. I spent half of it trusting her. And now nightmares?
Margot comes through the door, and Anne's room followed by Peter. Mr. and Mrs. Frank indicating that everything is all right. Peter takes Margot back to Anne.
You're safe here. You see? Nothing has happened.
To Dustle.
Please, go back to the room. Taking yourself in the middle.
Picking up a book and a pillow.
Thank you, but I'm going to the one place where there's peace.
He stalks out Mr. Van Dam in the underwear and trousers, comes down the stairs. To Dustle.
What is it? What happened?
A nightmare. She was having a nightmare.
I thought someone was getting murdered.
Unfortunately, no.
He goes into the bedroom. Mr. Van Dam goes back up into the stairs. Mr. Frank in the main room sends Peter back to his own room.
Thank you.
Can you get my sweater?
Go back to bed.
Can you get my sweater?
Peter goes back to his room. Mr.
Can you get my
Frank
sweater?
follows him, turning out the light and looking out the window. Then he goes back into the main room and gets up on the chair, turning out the center hanging lamp. To Anne.
Would you like some water?
Anne shakes her head.
Was it a very bad dream? Perhaps if I told you, I'd rather not talk about it. Don't worry, bro. Try to sleep then. I'll sit right here beside you when you close.
She brings a stool over, sitting there.
You don't have to. But I'd like to stay with you. Really. I'd rather you did. Good night then.
She leans over, down to kiss Anne. Anne throws her arm over her face, turning away. Mr. Frank, hiding her, kisses arm.
You'll be alright? There's nothing that you want. Please ask Father to come.
After a second,
Of course.
sensing her hurt,
40.
after a second,
Of course, man.
she hurries onto her other room. Mr. Frank comes to her, and she comes in